Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. Ending several years of court challenges, Trump's tax returns are now public. House Democrats released them today, saying it's their duty to provide a check on the executive branch. Others say it's a violation of privacy and a dangerous new political weapon. NTD's Melina Wisecup brings us the details.
2 years after leaving the White House and just a few months into his new run for office, Trump's tax returns are now open for public scrutiny. The Democrat-led House Ways and Means Committee released the past 6 years of Trump's tax returns, revealing that for 4 of those 6 years, Trump reported income losses. In 2020, the former president reported a loss of $4.7 million and paid $0 in federal taxes. But in 2018 and 2019, he and Melania paid about $1.1 million in net federal income taxes. The documents of his returns are thousands of pages and include both his individual returns and business returns. Now, Democrats have been working for years, since 2019, to get access to these documents. The legal battle lasted for years and went all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court finally ruled last month, allowing Congress to have access to these tax returns, although in that ruling, it was relatively short and the justices didn't explain their reasoning for allowing Congress to have access to these documents. Trump, in his reaction today, criticized both the court's decision and House Democrats, warning that now that this has happened, it's a, quote, two-way street. And the House did try to take some concrete action with this, although it was mainly symbolic. They recently passed a bill that would reform the presidential audit process. Now, this would have required the IRS to conduct an audit of a president's personal and business tax returns quickly after they're filed. It would also require the agency to quickly release the status of those audits and release the tax returns themselves within 90 days after they're filed. But some are saying this sets a dangerous precedent. Republican Kevin Brady, a retiring congressman and Republican leader on the House Ways and Means Committee, wrote that this public release would allow Congress to have nearly unlimited power to target and make public the tax returns of private citizens, political enemies, business and labor leaders, or even the Supreme Court justices themselves. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
And the former president continues to make his way into the news cycle. And to assess the potential fallout from the House releasing the former president's tax returns, we're happy to have the founder of the Center for Security Policy, Frank Gaffney. Frank Gaffney, thank you so much for joining us.
It's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Frank, I want to ask you about former President Trump's tax returns having been released by Congress. What do you expect to come from this, if anything?
Honestly, I have no idea. There's obviously a lot of business and financial activity that's going to be reported. I guess my working assumption is that if there were something really untoward or unsavory or criminal, most especially, we'd have heard about it before now, that have been leaked. You'd have people out doing press conferences and the like. And the fact that they're putting it out on a Friday at the end of the year during a holiday, it suggests to me there's really not much to see here, folks, after all of this thrashing and, character assassination and the rest of it. So I hope that's the case. I would like to see the president spared for further calumnies as well as, prosecution. But I guess we're just going to have to wait and see what comes out of it.
I'd also like to ask you, Frank, the January 6th committee now dropping the subpoena to have former President Trump testify. Does this hold any form of significance, or was this somewhat expected?
I don't know that it was expected. I think people in the Trump camp thought that they had the better of the argument and that at the end of the day they would have prevailed had it been taken to court. But the fact that the committee was a miscarriage from beginning to end seems to me to be, instructive here. There were any number of things that they've done that seemed to be designed really just to dirty up President Trump, to make it more difficult for him to be a candidate for office in the future. And I think this idea of subpoenaing him and having him come before the committee and having, sworn testimony and roughing him up in that setting, it wasn't going to work out. And at the end of the day, they're out of business, and so is the subpoena.
Frank, lastly, you still have looming the committee referring charges to the Department of Justice. What do you think that they're looking for? How concerned should the former president be there? And, the country's also been through so much over the past 3 years on so many different levels. Now that we're seeing the Twitter files showing DOJ collusion with big tech, do you think this might play into their decision as to how they might move forward?
Well, I guess who's counting? I would say that this has been going on for a lot longer than 3 years. As Donald Trump said the other day, it started when he came down the escalator in Trump Tower before the 2016 election. And I think it's been more or less relentless ever since. Look, this is the most politicized Department of Justice, I think, in the history of our country. It has been weaponized for personal political purposes by the President of the United States. There seems to be no check really on its use for that purpose. The FBI, the Justice Department, its prosecutors, U.S. attorneys, and others seem to be more or less charged with the responsibility of taking out President Trump, just as I think the January 6th committee was, and just as the previous impeachment hearings and the special prosecutor, and on and on. So would I be surprised if the Department of Justice does bring charges against President Donald Trump? Not at all. Would they stand up? I think it remains to be seen. Should the president be worried? Of course he should be worried. I think he is worried about all of this, not just the character assassination or the costs, but the fact that, this is something that seems to be, well, as the Chinese communists put it, unrestricted warfare against him. And there's no telling, what limits people will go to and what damage will be inflicted in the process.
Indeed. Frank, thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and Congressman Jamie Raskin both oppose each other fiercely on political issues. But Greene moved to close any personal gaps when she sent Raskin warm wishes for his battle with cancer. Raskin was diagnosed with a serious but treatable form of cancer called diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. Greene wrote on Twitter, "We disagree often, but I'll be praying for Jamie Raskin. Cancer is a terrible disease. I watched my father die from it, and it broke my heart. It's good Rep. Raskin has hope, and his form of cancer is curable with the treatment he will be starting." Raskin replied, writing to the Congresswoman, "Thank you, Marjorie, for this touching message, which my youngest daughter showed me. I'm grateful for your concern and very sorry to learn that you lost your father to cancer. Wishing you happy holidays with loved ones." Raskin will begin treatment at Georgetown University Hospital in Washington, D.C. He says he plans to continue working during this period. Controversy after an NBA game allowed the Chinese ambassador to the United States to be cast into the spotlight. This as the U.S. and China wrap up a year of bumpy relations, with a Chinese fighter jet coming extremely close to a U.S. aircraft.
This is just disgusting.
Backlash forming over some special treatment the Chinese ambassador got at an NBA game. Invited onto the court, Chinese Ambassador Qin Gang shot free throws at a Washington Wizards game this week. Former NBA player and his Canada Freedom says he's never seen anything like this.
NBA literally tried to give a free propaganda to a genocidal regime.
It's not the first time the NBA has given the spotlight to the Chinese envoy. In January, the Wizards played a video message from Qin during a game, and the Chinese Foreign Ministry even bragged about getting the airtime.
That was the one thing that really was driving me crazy. The biggest dictatorship in the world can control a 100% American-made organization.
Speaking with the Epoch Times this month, Freedom says money is pulling the strings.
NBA is not the only one. You see Hollywood, you see big techs, you see academias, you see Wall Street.
On Friday, the ambassador in the video was announced as China's new foreign minister. He has used strong rhetoric and remarks about Taiwan and Xinjiang, and even described himself as a wolf warrior, a term for an aggressive diplomat. And just a day earlier, the U.S. said a Chinese fighter jet came within 20 feet of a U.S. military plane, nearly causing a collision. The incident follows what the U.S. has called a recent trend of increasingly dangerous behavior by Chinese military aircraft. Reporting by Iris Tao, NTD News.
In response to the surge of COVID-19 cases in China, the CDC is considering new measures. The agency says they're considering sampling wastewater taken from international aircraft. 3 infectious disease experts told Reuters that such a policy would offer a better solution to tracking any emerging new variants, and it would offer a clearer picture of how the virus is mutating and slow the entry of the virus into the U.S. The experts pointed to China's lack of data transparency as a reason why. More countries are now introducing tougher measures on travelers from China. South Korea now requiring a negative COVID test for visitors from China. And Spain saying travelers from China will need to show a negative COVID test or proof of being fully vaccinated. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.